Hi guys, I'm Zach from NoDogs Media, and in today's video I'm going to be talking about the cost of owning specifically an NA Miata I suppose, but a Miata. So this is going to be relevant just as, you know, if you're looking to get one, but also if you're looking to get one as like a first car as well, so you know what you're getting yourself into pretty much. I will have side notes at the very end of the video that aren't really cost stuff, but will help you out if you're looking to get one as a first car or something to that effect. So first up we have the cost of actually buying the car straight up. So I paid for my car roughly, it was just under 50,000. Now that was a few years ago. The cost of the cars have obviously gone up in the past few years. These are now going from around 80 to 100k, so keep that in mind for the initial cost of getting the car. Next up we have repair costs. So you must keep in mind this is a 30-year-old car. It's going to need maybe 1 or 2 repairs depending on how bad condition you end up buying the car. So basically, if you pay a little bit more up front, you'll probably get a slightly better condition one. If you're willing to pay a little bit more down the line, you could probably get a worse off one. Anyway, I'll run you through what I had to fix on my car. First up we had some of the coolant pipes, this one in the front and then these two in the back. They were unfortunately, so when you don't put antifreeze in your car, there's actually an ingredient that's in antifreeze that actually stops the engine from rusting, because I mean it's water flowing through metal. What do you expect is going to happen, especially when it's sitting? And there's actually in the antifreeze it's supposed to stop that. Previous owners, since we're in very sunny South Africa, decided not to put in antifreeze, and it caused unfortunately rust issues. So I had to replace a few of the coolant lines because they kept popping and forming cracks and stuff. That was close to around 2,000 Rand actually, solely just because of the amount of antifreeze that then I lost from keeping antifreeze in my radiator so that I wouldn't have this problem again. But obviously I put antifreeze in, a pipe would pop, I'd have to change that pipe, antifreeze would have to be drained out, I'd lose all that antifreeze. Problem. So next up we have the hardtop. Now the thing with the hardtop is you can go with the soft top and get the soft top refurbished or repaired, but ideally what you want is both a hardtop and a soft top. I ended up actually even taking the soft top out of my car because it was just in that bad a condition, as well as when I was doing 120 on the highway on the way to my girlfriend's house, the soft top decided that it didn't feel like being up anymore and it kind of just flew back, and that was terrifying. So yeah, that was rather terrifying, so I decided to just get a hard top and tear out the soft top since the soft top was so damaged, and just I could have got it repaired, but it would have probably been the same price as just getting a hard top, and personally I like the hard tops more. The hard tops can go anywhere between 5 to 10,000, so keep that in mind as well. Ideally, if you could buy the car with a hard top, that's what you want to do. However, that is a very tricky situation to do, so maybe not. After that, we have the brake calipers. I'm sure many of you guys remember the dear brake caliper story. In short, I had a mild leak on this caliper here because, I mean, again, like I said, it is a 30-year-old car. It's going to have rust problems irrelevant of where you're picking it up from. There's a car driving past. The car's going to have rust problems irrelevant of if you're near the coast or not. It's an old car. So unfortunately this brake caliper had rusted a little bit and seized, and I don't know, stuff started to break, seals started to let go, it started to leak, and it was actually damaging my rim a little bit. I ended up paying around 2,000 to 3,000 to get my brake calipers refurbished. I'm not 100% sure on the cost, but I will have a little icon somewhere that pops up on the screen now to link you to the brake caliper video, where you can see, I think I actually spoke in that video of what it cost me and everything. So there we go. Next up we have just maintenance cost. So this is your yearly service that you do to your car, oil, coolant, and such and such. This is not necessarily the cheapest car in the world to maintain. It cost me roughly 1,000 rand, but now keep in mind that is firstly a once a year payment, I suppose, as well as I'm buying exceptionally high quality oil and coolants and fuel filters and oil filters for my car to keep my car in perfect condition because it's so old. You could buy cheaper stuff and probably get away with it. These are quite robust engines and don't generally give issues. I'm just trying to ensure the most longevity out of my engine that I possibly can get, so I tend to buy very expensive oils and such. You can also obviously get away with putting synthetic oil for the diff oil and the gearbox oil, and then you don't really have to change that every service either. There are ways around it. Obviously it depends on how well you want to take care of the car or how little money you want to spend, so it's kind of up to you guys. But like I said, I spend roughly 1,000 rand to service my car to the peak condition. But keep in mind that because these cars are so light, I do not go through tires and I do not go through brake pads or brake discs very quickly. I mean, I've been running on these these tires for close to 4 years now, and I still have plenty of tread. And then for the pads, I've never actually finished a set of brake pads. I've just ended up having to change brake pads because when I bought the car, the first set of brake pads that were in there were pop. The second pair of brake pads that I put in weren't the ones that I wanted to put in, and they were kind of squeaky and just weren't that nice. So after a while, I think by the next service, so the year after, I ended up swapping them for really nice ones. And then I redid the brake calipers, so I ended up putting in new brake pads just whilst they were out. So I've never actually needed to change my brake pads. I've just ended up changing them once a year pretty much anyway. But you could probably get close to 2 years, 3 years maybe without needing to change brake pads. Don't hold me to that. That's obviously up to driving style and such. But yeah. Also, maintenance costs, I did forget to mention, I obviously have a cone filter, which means I don't have to replace the normal material filters that you do get. I can just wash my filter, so a little bit easier going for me, I suppose. A little bit cheaper cost there. Next up, we have the fuel cost. Now, before I get to that, let me just mention that you must remember this is firstly an older car, so it's probably going to be running kind of rich and so on. Then secondly, I think my fuel pressure regulator has been modified, so it's running richer than it should, as well as the engine is reading slightly differently because obviously I have the intake is reading slightly rich, so that it doesn't do damage to the engine basically. So it's just dumping a lot more fuel than what is necessary. But like I said, this isn't a very fuel efficient car in the first place, because you must remember this was designed to be a sports car, not an eco-friendly car. So I get roughly around 10 kilometers per liter, if I've worked that out correctly. That's not ideal, that's actually quite heavy, but like I said, my car is not tuned correctly, as well as I think a few things have been tampered with so that I think things have been filled with, so I think it's running a lot more rich than it should, which means more performance, sure, but less fuel efficiency. So keep that in mind. However, that's generally the kilometers per liter I get. You could probably get a little bit more also if you don't drive like an absolute baboon like I do, but we'll move past that. So next up we have the insurance costs. Now you guys need to remember that this is a classic car, so technically speaking the insurance would pay you out more than what you pay for the car. That depends on obviously who you're insured with and blah 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 blah. There are multiple different variations, and it's exceptionally hard for me to tell you what kind of insurance costs you guys will get, because well, it depends on your gender, it depends on your age, depends on what Miata you have, if it's the 1.8 or the 1.6. There are so many different variables that I actually can't give you an accurate number. But just keep in mind that insurance is something that you guys will need to keep in mind when looking at a Miata. So next up to keep in mind is the mod cost. So now this is a very hard thing for me to say because you might have a different idea on how you'd like to modify your car versus how I'd like to modify mine. You might want to completely restore the car. I plan to turbocharge it and make it fun. So now that obviously depends on the condition of the car that you get, if it is already modified with the mods that you want, blah 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 blah. There are multiple versions and different conditions for that, so I can't give you guys an accurate pricing on that as well. However, it is something to keep in mind for your car and when you decide to start modifying it. Alright, with all the costs out of the way, some of them being variable and such, I thought it would be worth mentioning, if you are looking at this to be your first car or something like that, one or two noteworthy things. So first up we have the engine. There are two different versions here in South Africa for the NA Miata, so the one with the pop-up headlights. You have the 1.8 and the 1.6. Now, something to keep in mind is if you plan to go turbocharged, the 1.6, well actually no, if you plan to do any form of forced induction, so supercharger or turbocharger, obviously you want lower compression pistons because that can hold more boost. So the 1.6s actually have lower compression pistons than the 1.8s. If you plan to go naturally aspirated, then the 1.8. If you plan to completely rebuild the engine and put forged pistons in anyway, then the 1.8 because it's a bigger engine. So just keep that in mind for your build and what you plan to do. I will, however, mention that these 1.6s, even at their normal bore and stroke 1.6, are more than capable to get, well, the engine anyway is more than capable to get to around 280 horsepower. So that should be more than enough in most situations. If you're starting to play with more than that, then you're kind of just like a highway baller. Anyway, next up, how you tell if it's a 1.6 or 1.8. Super duper easy. The 1.6 has an intake pipe that comes underneath this radiator pipe, whilst the 1.8 has the intake pipe sits on top. Another thing to keep in mind safety wise, the 1.8s, whether it be an NA or an NB, have ABS, so anti-lock brakes. That is a very nice safety feature to have. However, if you're not too worried about ABS and safety features and stuff, I would say you don't have to worry about it too much. Not having ABS is okay as long as you understand how to handle the car without it. That's all I will say. Next up to keep in mind is that we don't have airbags. I believe only the NBs started to be spec'd with airbags, whilst the NAs do not have airbags whatsoever. The US spec does, so the left-hand drive version. However, I think there's like 2 or 3 in the country, so yeah, and then it's also very difficult to drive in the country since we drive right-hand drive. But we got these fancy Momo steering wheels, which as you can see has no airbag whatsoever. So also something to just keep in mind. Last but not least is storage space. Obviously, again, if you're looking at getting this as a first car, you might need some storage space for whatever reason inside your vehicle, for whatever reason. So now the rear shelf that's here behind the front seats, obviously there are no back seats, but there is a small rear shelf that you can store a little bit of stuff. As you can see, I have my jacket and my camera bag and stuff there. It can fit a fair amount of stuff. However, if you put a roll bar, it kind of becomes pointless. And then if we come back here to the boot, as you can see, the boot is also quite small and is taken up a majority by the spare wheel. So now I will mention that the Storage space is deceptive. You can actually fit, as long as you pack neatly and play a little bit of Tetris, you can actually fit a fair bit in the car, but don't expect it to be anywhere near, you know, a normal practical car that you can just dump a whole bunch of stuff in. You will have to play a little bit of Tetris and be smart about what you're packing. That is what I will say for that. Okay, and that's actually it, guys, for the cost of owning a Miata, and then some practical information if you are looking at it as a first car or as a replacement for something. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you found this information useful. If you did, please leave a like and a subscription and a comment. Maybe if I missed something out, you can also leave a comment and I can try to reply there. But yeah, until next time, guys, cheers. Oh, hello there, and welcome back to No Dogs Media. Anyway, I don't like that.
Does it matter what order it's in?
Yes. Am I in shot? Because you look like you're filming my crotch right now. Next up, I feel like you're filming here. Moving on. Next up, we have a bike driving past and being noisy.
You merely adopted the dark. I was born in it, molded by it. I didn't see the light until I was already a man. By then it was nothing to me but blinding.